A great way to start the day with Paul Gallo.
And it's a good way to start the day with good news as far as the state of Mississippi. I mentioned something on Twitter this morning, Philip. I said, give it 10 or 15 years and pass it by fast. I think what you guys did yesterday has the propensity to just, and we go back and look at it at 10 or 15 years from now, just to be economic development on steroids for that Golden Triangle area, and who knows where else in the state because of that.
Well, I hope you're exactly right about that.
Yeah.
You know, this project yesterday is, I've used the word transformative. It is something that will completely change the landscape, particularly in that area, but also across Mississippi. And I think it sends a positive signal to other companies around the country that may be looking for a place to expand or go, that Mississippi is very much open for business, and we are ready to deal with them and invite them to come to our state. Job creation is vital to the future of our state, and we recognize that. Along those same lines, we have spent a lot of time focusing on workforce development.
Yeah.
I will tell you, and I may have said it on this show before, but I'll say it again. Last year, I had the opportunity to meet with a man who was in Jackson from the group that he worked with. He represented an association of manufacturers, and his job was to be a site selector.
Yeah.
And I said to him, when you go around the country and you're looking for a place to recommend to your company or to your association where they ought to place a business, what is the first thing you look for? And without missing a beat, he said workforce. You got to have an educated, reliable workforce. So that's just kind of representative, I think, of the focus that we in the legislature have tried to the thing we've tried to focus on in the last few years is workforce development. And
I asked the governor yesterday, I was talking to the governor when we were talking to him yesterday, did these new metrics that you guys put together last year from Accelerate Mississippi on saying, here's our rating system, you guys can see that. Did that play into this? It certainly didn't hurt, and it's a lot. And these people were existing clients or customers already in the state.
Right, yeah, and I think you're right. It certainly didn't hurt, and it probably helped when we can demonstrate to them that we're serious about hosting them, if you want to use that term, inviting them to come to our state and do business, and we stand behind helping them be successful. We want to help your company be successful, because when you're successful, our citizens not only have jobs, but the entire state of Mississippi is successful. And so we've got to start doing those things that send that message, and that will attract more jobs in the industry, hopefully.
The aluminum, my understanding, is going to be used, the soft cans, soft drink cans, vehicles, and several other things. Who knows if they'll find different uses for that. But other parts of the project include $250 million for a future project producing 100 jobs, $200 million for an aluminum mill campus development with 160 jobs, $150 million for renewable biocarbon facility producing 40 jobs, the amount to be determined for a possible future port facility. The state plans also $155 million for the project with all but $500,000 going to the aluminum plant. The rest will be spent on the biocarbon plant. Are you satisfied with the numbers?
Yes, sir. The MDA uses a formula to make sure that these projects give a good return on investment, that we're not overextended. Give you an example. I had a guy many years ago, probably 10 years ago now, come to me, and he was an existing business in Mississippi, and he wanted an additional $1 million to expand. And I said, well, how many jobs is that going to create? He said, well, about one. I said, well, we're not going to give you $1 million to create one job. So when you look at the number of jobs created compared to the amount of money that we're investing as a state, you get 1,000 jobs out of this deal, and the average salary is about $93,000.
That blows my mind. That's incredible.
That's huge. I know. That's mind-boggling in it, and in the Golden Triangle area where you're going to have This is going to be a regional impact, Paul. I was in Meridian 2 nights ago for an event, and the people there were talking about it, how some people in Meridian, Kemper County, will probably go and work there. What's that, an hour drive for them?
Yeah.
The reach will be over to Starkville, or it'll be up to Tupelo. It'll be over into Alabama, where people will come and work at this facility, and it will be a tremendous economic boon to that.
Yeah,
region.
One of the things I think, and I'm not sure about because I've never been to the Blue Springs plant in Toyota, but I'm sure it's the same thing. But I have the experience of living close by to Nissan, and you just think after the plant is built, well, it's not really doing that much. But you go back and you take a snapshot of where we are today in that area of growth and look at it right before Nissan built. And it is amazing the impact has, not only on the residential, but all of the support facilities and all of the support for the extra growth in suburbs, from gas stations to everything else. This large-scale site will allow for a select number of customers to co-locate, could increase the investment in the community in numerous places. Construction is to begin, I guess, early next year. And they'll be through with the aluminum mill in 2025, so only a couple of years, and they'll be up and running.
Yes, sir. And you make a good, what you said brings to mind a good point. Mm-hmm. I have talked to economic developers not only in Mississippi but across the country and in other states, and this is a highly competitive game we're playing here, and so many of these companies are ready to do business now, and not and what I'm trying to say is you've got to have a site ready to go now. Yeah. Company comes to Mississippi, we want to build this facility, and if we take them out to a site and say, now here's a prospective site, and if you come, we'll have it ready to go a year from now. They don't want to wait a year from now. They want a site that's ready to go today. And so I've tried to challenge our economic developers and our communities around the state to say, look, you've got to have a ready-to-go site. Because if you don't, South Carolina is, or Georgia is, or some other state is going to have a site that's ready to go. So as we seek to attract jobs in industry, many of our economic developers and communities need to think through that and have a site that is ready to go to the extent that they can have it ready to go, because you're more likely to attract that company when they can come in and get started immediately with their construction. Continental Tire was a prime example. That was a raw piece of land that was had already had the infrastructure in it. It had the railroad in it. It had interstate. It had access to a port. All they had to do was come in and get the bulldozer and start clearing it off and building their facility. And that was one of the things that one of the reasons we were able to get that.
I was going to mention that Continental Tire in your backyard, not too far from you. I mean, that's a mega deal, and I mean, it's up and running full speed.
Yes, sir. And it was one of the reasons we were able to get that is because the infrastructure was there, and it was a site that this project in Golden Triangle. There was a building there that I think, as I understand it, used to be a part of a steel mill. It put them that far down the road to getting up and running. They want to get up and running as quickly as possible, and the further along you can have your property developed, the less, or the more likely you are to get it.
I do want to ask you this: does this change or increase your appetite to again maybe go back and address the income tax? That we could do it a little bit faster as far as elimination of all of it instead of does that affect it at all?
Well, Paul, it could and should. It's been my position, as you know. We fought long and hard last year to try to get that income tax eliminated, and we did get a huge step in that direction with the largest tax cut ever. But I will tell you kind of an anecdote that makes the point. In discussions yesterday with some of my colleagues, the question was asked about this particular spot in Columbus, Mississippi. Are we going to see the benefit of it in Mississippi? Because a lot of these folks may move across the line to Alabama, and there was great discussion about, oh my gosh, are we going to spend this money and nobody live in Mississippi? And they went on and on for about 5 minutes, and I finally said, if we had eliminated the income tax, none of these people would have a reason to live in Alabama. And that's the point. If we had eliminated the income tax, everybody who's going to work at this plant would have no reason to live across the line in Alabama.
Right, and we can continue this on the other side. But I do want to ask you this. So you think fiscally, when you start looking at the numbers, the past revenues and maybe some of the projections, do you think that is something that could be brought up in a serious manner in 2023?
On the income tax?
Yes.
Yes, sir. It certainly could.
Okay. All right. We'll talk more with Philip Gunn, Speaker of the House. U.S. Senator Roger Winker's in the House. He's coming up next at 8:05. And then Brian Flowers. Brian is running against Minnie Thompson. Due date is almost here in the 2nd Congressional District. Back with more coming up next. One more thing on, somebody asked me this and I forgot to mention it. The name of the company, I'm sure most people know this, is Steel Dynamics. Joint venture SDI Biocarbon Solutions, LLC, will be the ones constructing the biocarbon production. We have talked about this off air, all of us, and yesterday we got word, and I want to spend a couple of seconds on this one. And I believe we're going to do something next week on this also. But Dick Hall, the former transportation commissioner, former legislator, passed away yesterday. You want to mention anything about that, sir?
Absolutely, and we were saddened to hear that. We actually had a tough day yesterday in the House of Representatives. Not only, as you rightly point out, Dick was a former, I think he was a House member originally. Then he became a state senator, and then he moved into the highway commissioner spot. His wife, Jennifer, is a lobbyist at the Capitol, and very active in Republican women activities, and a good friend, good supporter. Both of those individuals have always been kind to me. And it was sad to see his passing. We also had one of our House staffers, Lavinia Adams, whose husband passed yesterday. We also had Noel Akins, former House member and father of Senator Nicole Boyd, die, I guess was Sunday morning. And J.B. Markham, former House member who served with me for a few years, died as well. So we opened the House yesterday in prayer with memory of all four of those families, and adjourned in memory of them yesterday as well. So tough day. In the midst of the excitement surrounding this, it was a sobering thought to think of all four of those.
I was interested and saw on Twitter the Democrat Party was not happy with this for some reason.
No, I think they actually ended up all voting for it on both ends of the building.
Well, I was reading the tweets from the party itself, not so much the members of the House and Senate.
Well, I didn't pay attention to that. Yeah. I don't follow the tweets of the Democratic Party. But they did have a press conference before the event started, and it wasn't necessarily, as I understand it, I did not see the press conference, but as I understand it, it wasn't necessarily against this as much as
the expansion of Medicaid for the most part.
Yeah, that and the Jackson Water situation and the Greenwood Hospital that supposedly is closing. I think they just wanted to bring attention to other items that needed attention besides this, but it did not sense that they were against this project. They just wanted other items to be addressed as well.
Philip Gunn is the Speaker of the House. I got to ask you, Mr. Speaker, when you start looking at, and you just brought this up, but as leader of the House of Representatives, is something going to be done, or is some attention going to be brought to this? Commissioner Cheney was on with me this week. He mentioned on the air, kind of breaking the news, that at least a lawsuit is being contemplated, not planned yet, but contemplated, and also thinking about maybe even curtailing or prohibiting Blue Cross Blue Shield from even writing new policies unless some type of agreement is done between both of these parties. Is there anything the legislature, or you think, being a lawyer and also as Speaker, what would you forward in the House of Representatives to kind of bridge this gap here?
Well, that's a difficult question, Paul. We are aware of that situation. We are trying to look at what legislative remedies could be brought to bear to help in that situation. And if we develop a positive or a solution that might help, we will certainly consider bringing that forward. But right now, we're just trying to gather information and look at what could be done there.
I know you've got an appointment that you've got to go to, so just a couple of seconds more here, so I'll let you go. I don't want you to get caught in traffic. But the top things that you're looking forward to or you think need to be handled in 2023, because it's around the corner as far as the 23 session.
Yes, sir. Well, we have a number of things that we want to look at. I am, in light of the Dobbs decision, which overturned Roe versus Wade, we're going to continue. We always have been very much pro-life, and we're going to continue to look for ways that we can engage or continue to help in that area. There are one of the biggest things, I guess, is one of the most exciting things I need to mention in the remaining time that I have is the Crisis Pregnancy Center tax credit that we passed this past session. We did a $3.5 million tax credit, and the businesses around the state need to hear this. If they don't hear me say anything else this morning, this is a tremendous opportunity where you can engage to help our mothers and our children who are presumably now going to be born now that abortion no longer exists in our state. This is a dollar-for-dollar tax credit that you can take advantage of to help crisis pregnancy centers. This is a tax liability tax credit that you can take advantage of. So if you're a company and you owe $10,000 tax to the state of Mississippi, you can give up to half of that to a crisis pregnancy center and get a dollar-for-dollar tax credit. So you owe $10,000 to the state of Mississippi, you can take $5,000 of that and give it to a crisis pregnancy center to help them buy food, clothes, diapers, whatever they do for these women who are coming to them for assistance. And that's a tremendous help to these crisis pregnancy centers. Keep in mind, you're going to pay this money. You owe the money. You can either give it to the state of Mississippi or you can give it to a crisis pregnancy center. And it's a tremendous advantage to help the crisis pregnancy centers. It's a great example of how the government can incentivize a private sector solution without spending more government money on a government program. And I've got friends who are business owners, and they are taking advantage of this. We're trying to get the word out, trying to spread that, because right now I think only about $800,000 of that tax credit has been used. Now, keep in mind, this only came into effect on July 1 when the law went into effect. We only got 6 months of this year from July 1 to December 31 to take advantage of that, but it's $3.5 million. I am going to propose raising that to $10 million this next session. The reason being that I have asked all the crisis pregnancy centers to tell me what their annual operating budget is, and it totals $10 million. So if we can give a tax credit for $10 million, we will theoretically have opened the door for businesses to step up and completely provide the total operating budget for all. There's 37 crisis pregnancy centers around the state. So if you're a business owner and you're looking for a way to engage on a pro-life issue and a way to help single moms and babies, look into this, because you can give this money. I use this example. I have twin boys. They're 31 now, but when they were little, we had problems with them cleaning their room. And I told them, you're gonna clean your room. You can either clean your room or you can get punished and clean your room, but you're going to clean your room. Keep in mind, you owe this money. This is not a contribution or donation or charitable contribution over and above what you normally pay. This is money you owe. You are going to pay
Just
the
take
money.
some time and dedication to do it.
You can either give it to the state or you can give it to a crisis pregnancy center. So
how long do you think it's going to be before we start getting some numbers in to see how many babies additional were born this year compared to pre-Dobbs? And where do you look for that information? Department of Health or the crisis centers? Or,
yes, sir.
Or are you looking for that information?
Well, the latest numbers we have come from 2020. At least the latest numbers I've seen come from 2020. At that time, there were 5,071 Mississippians who had an abortion. The clinic we had here in Jackson performed, I think, 3,500 abortions. So there were 5,071 women in Mississippi women who had abortions. Some of those went to other states, obviously, to have that. So that I'm using that figure because that's the latest figure we have. That gives you kind of a sense of what we're talking about here, about 5,000, presumably women who previously would have had an abortion will now be having a baby.
If the postpartum comes up again, will it be reconsidered again as far as the House is concerned?
The postpartum issue, well, let's just talk about that, Paul. I mean, you're talking 5,000 women who previously had an abortion. That population is a small number. 5,000 is a smaller, and we don't know that all of those women were on Medicaid. Many of those probably were not. 60% of the births in this state are on Medicaid, so if you take 60% of that number, then that's only 3,000. And of those, statistically, 45% of women return to the workforce within 40 days of having or giving birth. So you reduce that number even further. My point is your population who would need those services is very small, somewhere around 1,600. I think we can find ways to help those 1,600 without expanding Medicaid for 21,000 people around the state. I just don't know that the need for all 21,000 women is for expanding postpartum.
We got it. I appreciate it so very, very much, sir.
Thank you.
I know you have to head out, so we thank you. Be careful on your trip there, and we'll talk to you later.
Thank you, Paul. Good to be with you.
Good to be with you. That is Philip Gunn, the Speaker of the House.